Hi folks, Dr. H here once again, and I hope everyone is finally registered their online text and able to access everything. I know some of you had to wait a bit before you purchased the text, and therefore you've had to wait a little bit before accessing any of the online materials. So hopefully all of that has been taken care of now. I did email some of you with some questions specifically pertaining to the activities on the e-learning site and on our online text. And I've heard back from most of you, but not all. So for those of you who might be watching this, if you have not answered the emails that I sent out regarding your specific activity on the online textbook, please do take a minute and read those and get back to me because it's very important. Remember, your grade is based upon all of the activity that you participate in, including the online text. So I wanted to alert you to a couple of things. First of all, we are having to adjust some of the deadlines for the first few lessons and assignments for the first couple of sections. This was done in order to let everyone catch up. I did send out an email letting everybody know that we are going to be progressing from this point forward. So from here on out, everyone should be able to complete the assignments within the time frame that's going to be set. I wanted to wait to set specific deadlines for everything until everyone got registered. So this was sort of a late start class, and we didn't really know how many we were going to have. We also didn't get the, not everyone was able to get all the materials at the same time. So kind of had to adjust a little bit, but it's all good. Everything will be working out just fine. As always, if you are having any types of connectivity issues or technical issues related to either the e-learning site or our online text, please get in touch with me right away. The sooner I know about it, the sooner I can get you back on track and let you know what and get you where you need to be. Okay, so this next section has to do with rhythm and meter, section 3. So we're going to be looking at rhythm and meter specifically. And I'm going to walk you through the section on rhythm, and you note that there are some classes with respect to rhythm and meter. There are 2 classes. So you want to look at both of those. Also wanted to point out to you that we are going to have a new um, discussion topic coming up. And that discussion topic is related to what you listen to. So read the topic, read the specific question that I'm asking you to think about and supply an answer. Remember that you're going to need to make a comment on 2 comments. Let me try that again. You're going to need to comment on 2 of your classmates. It's up to you which 2 classmates you want to make a comment on, but only 2. And you can make the comment as brief as you like, but you know it needs to be something that tells us how you feel about what you're reading based upon what your classmate is listening to. So the objective here is just to find out, quite honestly, what we would hear if we were to plug our headphones into your iPad or to get into your car momentarily. And what would be playing on the stereo, for example, if we get into your car, or if we plug our headphones into your iPod or your MP3 player, what would we hear? What's on your playlist? Now, I don't want a bunch of songs. I want a specific song or genre. So if you listen to country, put that in there, and then give me a specific title. What country? What country music do you like? What artist do you like? Or if it's rock, or if it's screamo, whatever. I want to know what it is that I would hear. And we're going to have a discussion on that, on our findings. And then I wanted to mention that there's also going to be a panel show coming up where I've invited several colleagues and friends who are all into gaming, and they're all into music in some fashion. Most of them are professional musicians, but they are 1 or 2 of them are also computer design gamers, and they design their own games, for example. And we're going to be discussing music in gaming, and I would like your opinions on that. And once that panel show has become active, I'm going to invite you to send in questions or comments based upon your own experiences with gaming. Now, this is not a have to. This is just something for fun, but it is a discussion topic that I would like you to participate in. So if any of you are interested in participating in the panel show with a question, if there's something that you would like me to address to the panel and say, hey, this person has this question regarding this specific game and this specific music, by all means, please send me an email with your question and I'll be happy to post that to the panel. I'm hopeful that the panel show will become a regular thing. This is a brand new uh, venue for me, but we're hoping that we can maybe turn it into an actual course that you take at Delta related to music and gaming, music and popular culture, things like that. So your opinions and your questions and your input are greatly appreciated. So I'm gonna we'll go now into our online text. That is the On Music Fundamentals text, and let's take a look at rhythm. Thanks, folks, and glad that everyone is finally able to get on board with the text. Okay, so now we're taking a look at our online text for this section. This is the C4E link, which you can access from our e-learning site, or if you have thought of it already, you might want to think about doing it. Just taking the bookmark and bookmarking the link so that you can just click on the bookmark rather than have to go through the e-learning site. Going to the e-learning site is not a problem. You have to access it anyway for some of the other materials, but you might want to bookmark this as well just in case. For those of you who are just now accessing the online text, you need to watch those introductory videos. I make an introductory video for every section that we introduce. So that kind of shows you where things are and the layout of things and how to access different points, but also the features that are available to you. So this section has to do with rhythm and meter. This is section 3, and I encourage you to take a look at the section overview because it does contain things that are of help to you. For example, it has this video that you can watch that describes music and rhythm and meter. Essentially what it does is just simply talk about the same things that are in this paragraph here. You also notice, remember, you have these icons up here. This sort of outlines key terms that you're going to be using throughout this course. So I encourage you just to take a look at them. Some of the terms are more than what you need, so you kind of have to weed those out a little bit. But if you have questions about any of it, just give me, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to answer that. Also notice you have something called Collaborate. That's not a feature that we need to use. And of course the discovery video, that's what this is. So I encourage you to just take a look at the section overview just to give you a brief description of what's going on. Also to note, the arrows on either side of your screen, these will help you click forward, click backward, and so forth. So if you just click forward, it's going to bring you to the chapter outline, and this talks about what we're going to be looking at. The introduction, of course, is something we looked at with the video. But pulse, tempo, note values, rest, dots, ties, dotted rhythms, and so forth. All of these have different meanings in music, in rhythm, and in meter. So let's just kind of jump in a little bit and take a look at some of these things. The definition of rhythm is quite good here. It is an essential part of music. It is the aspect of music that has to do with the organization of sound and time. Together with pitch and timbre, it constitutes one of the most basic parameters of music. Now let's talk about those two terms a moment, pitch and timbre. We've actually already looked at, if you remember, from the previous sections, we talked about notes and pitches. If you pull up the little keyboard and you play a note, those are pitches. Timbre is a type of sound that an instrument or a human voice or really anything that creates a sound, it's that specific type. It's style, if you will, or its characteristics. My voice has a certain timbre, another person's would have a different timbre, and this is also pronounced timbre, by the way. A trumpet has a different timbre than, say, a clarinet or a piano. So hopefully those two words are not elusive to you. But it says, together with pitch and timbre, it constitutes one of the most basic parameters of music. All music has rhythm. And so these are great definitions. One of the things I wanted to point out to you is this little bit here where we talk about tension and relaxation. When we talk about meter, we're essentially talking about pulses, strong pulses and weak pulses. And so when we listen to music, we experience that. You've experienced it already. If you've been to a rock concert where everybody's clapping to the beat, you might have also experienced where half of the audience is clapping on one beat and the other half is clapping on another, depending upon what's been smoked or drank before the concert begins. So the idea is that you feel those pulses in the music, and it's by design. You want to feel those. This is what we dance to, what we tap our feet to, snap our fingers, clap our hands, and so forth. And there is a tension and a relaxation. Now, this says the alteration of tension, relaxation in music, as can be heard in this passage from a string quintet by Franz Schubert. Now I'm going to pop my headphones on so I can listen with you, but I'm going to go ahead and play this so that we have a little bit of an idea of what this tension and relaxation is. So here we go. So that was just a little bit of an excerpt that you heard. And I hope that this gives you an example. Now, you are welcome to listen to the entire excerpt, but I hope you heard that when the piano came in on certain points, it was harder or stronger than others. That's the tension. Also, there were some harmonic components that enabled tension to take place when all the instruments came together to play, and then they sort of backed off. So that's that idea of tension and relaxation. Some people call it tension and release. Now, they also talk in this section about melody and harmony and rhythm are traditionally regarded as the basic elements of music. This is true. Rhythm is perhaps the most immediately perceived. And I would say for many people that is a very true statement. That's the first thing we sort of gravitate towards. Now, in your discussion topic this time, we talked about the music that you listen to. Well, that's kind of one of the questions, right? Why do you listen to the music that you listen to? What is it about the music that you listen to that attracts you to that specific genre or style? Okay, so looking ahead, we go into something called pulse and tempo. And pulse in music is this recurring beat, what you sense as strong or maybe sense as weak. It says here that if you listen carefully to music around you, one of the first things you will notice is that most of it has a recurring beat or pulse. The terms beat and pulse are basically synonymous, both referring to the regular beating of pulse or regular beating or pulsation of our hearts. Like our heartbeats, the pulse in music can speed up or slow down, and it can be regular or irregular. Most of the music that we hear is steady, regular pulse, however, and that, of course, is subjective. It depends upon the type of music that you listen to. But think about your heart for a second, and think about a pulse. If you happen to be studying nursing at Delta, or perhaps you're going into the medical profession, pulse is a very important thing, obviously, and learning how to read one's pulse or take one's pulse is very important. And pulses do speed up and they do slow down. Well, we call this speed, this rate, how fast or how slow a rhythm goes, we call that tempo. So here you go. Tempo here is indicated, and you have some very, very definitive Italian terms. So a little bit of history for you. Throughout most of history, the musical center of the world was in Italy, and that's no surprise when you consider world history. When the Roman Catholic Church ruled, 90% of the earth, they were making all the decisions. Well, Rome being in Italy, Italian, you kind of make the connection there. So there were brief periods where there were the musical center of the world shifted. It went to Paris for a little while, it went to Germany for a little while, and even for a very brief period, we had a brief flirtation with musical centers in both Russia and France, kind of at the same time, and it had to do basically with religious power centers, but also with the centers of government. So, but for some reason, even into today, we have held on to this tradition of musical markings and musical terms related to tempo and other dynamics, by the way, with Italian phrases. And so you can see them here: largo, meaning very slow; adagio, slow; andante, at a walking pace, and so forth; vivace, presto. So you didn't know you were going to learn Italian in this music class, but now the next time you go to Olive Garden, you can just spat off these tempo words. And of course, the wait staff at Olive Garden isn't going to know what you're talking about, but it's kind of fun anyway. All right, so let's move ahead and take a look at what you're going to be doing. This is talking about note values. If you already read music, all of this will be second nature to you, but do take a look. This is a note head, or these are note heads. So when you begin to place notes on the staff, when you were doing this in your pitch exercises and quizzes, you use the note head. Well, now we're introducing some other things here called stems and flags. So here we come down to note elements, and it says the following animation illustrates how a note head can be combined with a stem and a flag to create a note value. This particular note value is an eighth note. The chart given below the animation provides all of the most common values. Now, the reason they're saying that this particular note is an eighth note, well, let's take a look at it. First of all, an eighth note would have a stem and it would have a flag. The beam comes in a little bit later. That's when you beam notes with flags together. When you join them together, you join them with a beam. You'll find out more about that later, but let's click on this Show Me button here. Note that it's drawing a note head, it's filling it in. Now it's creating the stem, and then it's giving you the flag, showing you what an eighth note looks like. Now I'm going to let you play with this all you want, but you can see here all of the note values that you are responsible for knowing. So whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note, up to a 16th. Now, if you're good at math, you've probably already surmised that the note values of shorter duration increase in name exponentially. So what would come after the 16th? 32nd. What would come after a 32nd? 64th. And we could go on, of course. This is all you're going to need to know, though, up to the value of a 16th. And again, we can click on this Show Me button. Now this is showing you the durational values of these notes. Okay, now I can reset this, but I want you to take a look at what's going on here. Here is a whole note, and that is the note of longest duration, okay, that you're going to have to be associated with. We'll talk about dots and extensions and ties later. For right now, though, I want you to understand that this is a hierarchical chart. It's showing you longest to shortest durational values, but it's also showing you divisions of the values. So, for example, 2 half notes can fit into the space of 1 whole note, right? 4 quarter notes could fit into the space of 1 whole note, or 8 eighth notes into the space of 1 whole note, or 16 sixteenth notes can fit into this space. So what it's talking to you about is the durational value. A whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note, and 16th note. These are all durational values, and they all fit together, and they are all related, and they all have divisions. So for example, a half note can be divided into 2 quarters. A quarter note can be divided into 2 eighths. 1 eighth note could be divided into 2 sixteenths. So I encourage you to play around with this, and if you have difficulties understanding this concept, to email me and I'll see if I can't help you with it. But for right now, I also want you to notice something else. Notice that these eighth notes don't have flags, they're beamed together. Just like the 16ths, they don't have flags, they're beamed together. This is something that is done to save time. When people were writing music by hand, it was easier to write out these bars, these horizontal bars, rather than to write out individual flags. So it was a step saver. And I can tell you that publishers also like beaming because it saves on ink. Okay, so you can read up about what the function of the beams are. You can also read up some other note values here, 32nds, 64ths, and so forth, and how their flags work. Notice the flags always go on the right side of the stem, whether the stem is pointing up or whether the stem is pointing down. Now, there is a rule as to whether the stem points up or whether the stem points down, but that has to do with the musical staff. And we can talk about that when we begin to actually place notes rhythmically. Here is a musical staff, and notes that are placed above the third line, the stem points down. Notes that are placed below the third line, stem points up. Now here it's talking about not durational values of sound or note values. Now it's talking about durational values of silence, and in music we call these rests. You can see here that we have a whole note, and its equivalent rest value is a whole rest. It looks kind of like an upside down Amish hat. A half note looks like a right side up Amish hat. Quarter note, this is a squiggly line that I never could duplicate by hand. An eighth rest looks like the number 7, actually, with a little node on the end here. And the 16th rest, which looks like this with 2 little extra arms. So you might want to take a look at these and get yourself familiar with them. It says whole and half rest look very similar. Both are rectangular boxes that fill up half of a space on the staff, but they are positioned differently on the staff. The whole rest hangs from the 4th line of the staff. You can see here, there it is, it's hanging from there. And a half rest floats above. Pardon me. One clever way of remembering this is to imagine that the rest is a helium balloon. If it is full, a whole rest, it floats to the top of that space, of this 3rd space. But if it's only half full, it rests on the bottom. So there you go. You can click on those to your heart's content and learn about them. Here we go with 8th rests. Notice one flag, one little flag there, 16th rest. So there you go. And I encourage you to practice this. It says here that you can print out this notation sheet, and this should enable you to do this with Acrobat Reader. I'm going to open it up just so we can take a look at it. But essentially, what this is a practice sheet to enable you to write down notes, to write down rests and so forth. And this gives you the opportunity to trace notes and to trace rests. And this is a great little tool because it gives you the opportunity to kind of just, you know, figure out the best way to write these or figure out the best way to draw these. So play around with that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is get back to our original page here, and let's click on the next arrow. And this is dots. And it says here that a duration of any note can be lengthened slightly by adding a dot. To be more specific, read on. Note that it says a dot placed to the right of a note head increases its duration by 1/2. So it's not slightly, it's actually half. So if you take a quarter note, for example, and you put a dot next to the note head, to the right of the note head, now that quarter note, which was worth only 2/8, like this one here, you can see here a quarter note is worth 2/8. You put a dot by there, now it's going to be worth 3/8 notes. Now, here's a rule that you can take to the bank, folks. Any dotted note value is going to be divisible by 3 of something. So just rest assured, if you've got a dotted note value, it's going to be worth 3 of something. A dotted half note would be worth 3 quarter notes. A dotted whole note would be worth 3 half notes. So just remember that rule, that the dot increases a note's value, or rest, by the way, by increases its duration by half. If we click on the Show Me button, you can see here exactly what I said. So hopefully that is pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to let you read on and play around with this. Now we're getting into ties. A tie simply joins 2 notes of the same pitch together, and what that means is that it makes the length of the note longer. Notice that that note is struck, but it lasts through the duration of the note that it's tied to. So it sounds just like a half note, for example, and why you would use this instead of a half note. Well, there are some conditions that require you to do that, and we can talk about those, but you can see here in this excerpt a tie, and we'll just play a little bit of it. Note the tie across the bar line. And this piece is full of them. So ties just simply increase a note's duration, and dots increase a note's duration. A dot will only increase a note by half its value, but a tie's really just, it depends upon what it's tied to. So if you have a half note tied to a quarter, it's going to last through the duration of the half note and the quarter note. If you had a tie from a half note to a whole note, then it's going to last through that whole note, right? So it lasts its own value plus the value of the notes that it's tied to. I also should point out here that you can have tied notes into infinity. You could have whole notes tied together. In fact, there are some pieces of music that do have notes that are tied together infinitely. You can also see another example here. Let's play this one so you can just see where these ties come into play. This is a vibraphone on top and followed by wood blocks and a side drum. So this is giving you just a little taste of another type of music. So this is showing you music that is utilizing a beat, a pulse. That's the quarter notes down here. and the subdivision, that would be the eighth notes. And then note durational values that fit within that time frame. So I hope you can glean from this, for example, that this beat 1 contains a quarter note here in the side drum and a quarter note in the vibraphone, but 2 eighth notes in the wood blocks. So that represents 1 beat or 1 pulse. And then the second beat would be this quarter note and these 2 eighth notes, this eighth note and these 2 16ths. So that would be another pulse. So kind of cool stuff going on here. Let's advance. Dotted rhythms. Here you can see what they sound like. Notice that here is a dot, and this represents or a dot that we already know the function is to increase a note's duration by half its value. If we play this example, this is just simply showing you a dotted rhythm and what it would sound like. Note the counting numbers here underneath. I encourage you to read about that. Also play these excerpts which show you the beat duration and the pulse. Okay, so notice that. Notice that. Subdivision and pulse. I encourage you to listen to these and play through them. And if you have difficulty understanding them, please email me and I will do everything in my power to help you out. So here, this gets us to the practice worksheet. And then if we were to continue on from there, we would get the quiz, and that's the one that you're going to be graded on. And then of course if you go on to the next class, that has to do with meter specifically. And meter is another way that we organize in rhythm. Meter can be classified into duple, triple, or quadruple. And a pattern, for example, alternating strong and weak beats creating duple meter. If you listen to this, you'll hear it. But I want you to notice here there's some accent marks written, and notice that they are on every 2 beats. So that's why we call it duple. Here is one where the accents are on the first of groupings of 3 beats. So there we have triple. Quadruple, well, we would have accents every 4th beat. Got it? Or not every 4th beat, but on the first beat of every group of 4. If we continue on looking at meter, we're going to see how it is organized even further by using something called bar lines. Bar lines are these horizontal bars that split up the music. So just know this terminology and what it means. Don't worry about this little symbol right here. They're not really, that's a percussion symbol telling you that it's a percussion clef that you're looking at, and the reason they're doing it is to avoid any confusion with respect to pitch. Also note that the distance between bar lines is called a measure. Also, the second pulse in this particular meter, which is a duple meter, is called an upbeat. The first pulse is a downbeat. If you're looking at music that's in quadruple meter, or 4 pulses per measure, you would have downbeat followed by an upbeat, and then beat 3 would be another strong beat, so almost like another downbeat, and then beat 4 would be another upbeat. So it would be down, up, or strong, weak, and sometimes that can be confused as a duple meter if you're just listening. So the surefire way to tell whether it's duple or triple is, of course, to look at the music. Here we're talking about types of bar lines. I will let you read up on all of that. It's pretty fascinating stuff. And then we get into something called time signatures. Essentially, a time signature consists of 2 numbers. It looks very similar to a fraction, but it doesn't have the separator bar in between it. The top number tells us the number of beats, and the bottom number tells us the duration of beats. So I'm going to let you read up on all of this. Hopefully it is self-explanatory, but just take a look here. In 3/4 meter, the top number indicates that there are 3 beats in a measure. This means that all the music is in triple meter. The bottom number, which is a number 4, indicates that the beat is a quarter note. So there are 3 quarter beats or quarter note beats in every measure. Notice up here these numbers 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16. These are associated with note values. A whole note would be associated by the number 1. Now, let me explain a little bit further. So if you had a 3 over a 1 here, that would mean 3 beats per measure, and the whole note is what gets the beat. So it'd be 3 whole notes per measure. If you had 3, 2, 3 half notes per measure, and so forth. So hopefully this is becoming a little clearer for you. Once again, you can repeat these videos as often as you like to help you. There are some wonderful hints here and some exercises to listen to. Please avail yourself to these because they are extraordinarily helpful. And I'm going to let you continue reading on about incomplete measures and so forth to your heart's content. Then you have a quiz on meter. I'll let you fool with that. That's a great thing. And then we get back into major scales and key signatures for another section. So we'll be talking about those soon. So once again, as always, if you have questions, anything you don't understand or need clarification on, please email me and I will be very, very happy to help you out. Thanks, folks. Have a great spring break.